And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be looking at some NBA trade rumors, more so talking about the Lakers and their trade rumors as opposed to most of the other trade rumors, right? Because we do know about the Giannis trade rumor already. I already spent a couple of segments talking about his possibility of being traded to either the Heat or to the Brooklyn Nets. We'll still see if those talks are still rampant and if that's still going to happen. But right now, the focus is going to be on the Lakers, and this is sort of like the cycle that we expect coming in from the Lakers, right? I mean, they start out pretty solid. Everyone thinks they're going to be great, including myself, and then they go on a little bit of a slump, and then once they go on the slump, then they get into trade talks, and everyone immediately assumes, well, all the Lakers fans at least immediately assume that they're going to get absolutely everyone that they would want. And I will admit I was a little bit fooled by the Lakers 3-0 start. I thought that this would just be a continuous trend, but recently they've been in a rough spot. I mean, in the last few games they went 1-4, and they lost 3 contests, including one against the Detroit Pistons, by double digits, which again is not ideal. A huge blame for that. It can't be LeBron. It is, aside from one of those games, honestly, like against Phoenix, it was LeBron's fault. I will say that. But in the other games, Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell have not been performing nearly as well and nearly as consistent as you would like. And there's been talks of a little bit of an identity crisis going on around this team, and an abruptly ended press conference and some injury issues along with, Anthony Davis. I mean, he was out against the matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm not really going to blame the Lakers for losing in that one because, again, they did not have a player who's arguably their best player on the team, right? And when you don't have a player like Anthony Davis, it's a really, really big problem. And when you have LeBron, LeBron was dropping 39 points in that game. Like, he had 39 in that game. And when he's playing like that and the Lakers still end up losing, you know that there is a big problem with the rest of the players going on in the on their team. And hold on just 1 second because there might be a little bit of a problem with the stream. Hold on 1 second before I go ahead. All right. There we go. Anyways, continuing on with what I've said. The Lakers, they're in the phase where they're starting to talk about trades. And not Steph Curry. This is the image that I wanted to talk about. Oops. And of course, one of the big teams and one of the teams that have been in trade talks with the Lakers, especially last year, were the Chicago Bulls in regards with Zach Lavine, right? We've heard this talk happen already before. The Lakers hope to join that class of heavyweight title contenders going into the future, but they may have to look for outside help from organizations to, give them trades and possibly provide them the help that they need. And they could do worse than starting their search in Chicago. So there's the Bulls are, quote, expected to explore trade options involving Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic, according to ESPN's Jamal Collier, and both have been previously connected with the Lakers in possible trade targets. Like, I'm sure you guys remember from the last segments that I've done in regards to these trade rumors. The Bulls and the Lakers, they've been in talks previously. And there's reason why that neither Vucevic or Zach Lavine ended up landing in LA the previous seasons or anywhere outside of Chicago to this point. And they make a huge chunk of change. Lavine has a $43 million salary, while Vucevic makes $20 million per Sport Track. So that's the app where they track exactly how much these players are making in terms of contracts per year, right? And while they're both capable of posting big-time stat lines, neither has much history with team success. So the question, one of the questions, at least, in regards with trading them to the Lakers is like, if they get traded to the Lakers, is that going to change much? Like, that's really the big question, and that's probably why that the Lakers did not pull the trigger and why the Bulls didn't pull the trigger. And the Bulls have seen fairly and finally committed to a youth movement, and they've previously shopped both veterans to no avail. and their trade markets have produced little more than cricket chirps to this point. Because, like, for some reason, I don't understand why, but the Bulls, they just absolutely refuse to trade away Zach Lavine. I don't get it. For the longest time, they've never wanted to trade him, and I really don't understand why. Like, I just don't. And that's been like one of the bigger problems with the Bulls, the fact that they just have never wanted to commit to a full rebuild. It seems like that's what they want to do now, but maybe the market and like just how much these players are going for is not exactly what they would like to get in return. Maybe that's why they have not pulled the trigger with Zach Lavine or Vucevic. But if the Lakers were going to give chase with this opportunity, then the price would have to make sense on their part as well, because those aren't really break open piggy bank types of trade targets, right? I mean, if they do end up, depending on the trade, they could end up entering the second apron, and they could end up going above the second apron, which would not be good for the Lakers and their franchise. And going over the second apron is something that's just incredibly risky now. And if the Lakers, if they were going to give chase, they would have to open their piggy banks, but it's not really something that's easy to do when you have a player that's making 48 million and then you have the other 43 million, and then you have the other player that's making 20 million. Like, that's not a very easy investment to do. And they also aren't really ones who must be avoided at all costs. If either of them sits in the clearance section, they could be worthy investments, right? Like, if there's any team the way I see it, any team that grabs Zach Lavine is already going to improve their chances on winning, mainly because of Zach Lavine's skill set as a player. Again, it just depends on the team. And Lavine is a two-time All-Star. He's averaging just north of 22 points for the sixth time in the last 7 seasons. And he's also shooting incredibly well from the field. He's converting 49% of his field goals as well as 45% of his three-point shots, which is incredible. And those numbers are really hard to overlook for a team in need of more outside shooting like the Lakers. And along with that, support scoring for LeBron and Anthony Davis, who desperately need it. Vucevic has booked 2 All-Star trips as well, and he offers one of the better scoring distributing blends at the center position. And after running cold with his shooting in recent seasons, he's been scorching hot to start this one, at least. And it's early, obviously, so, this might end up changing in the long run, but he's shattering his previous best 45% from 3, averaging to the second most triples of his career, which is 2. Right? And both players, they both have things to prove. Staying healthy is one of them for Zach Lavine, and sustaining the shooting is the other one for Vucevic. So they both have something that they have to prove in this season. And but that's all right. Like, that's totally fine. The Lakers don't necessarily need to rush into the deal. They're still getting a feel for this roster and JJ Redick's impact as the coach. Not to mention, it'll be a while before the trade market really takes shape. And it's really too early for these teams to tell what they can and what they can't achieve in the season. So maybe doing a trade sooner is worse than doing a trade later. So, again, there is the philosophy better late than never. So as long as they end up doing this trade, then they'll be good. But again, they just have to wait and sort of, feel things out and see the situation for as it is. And again, the season is still young. So we have no idea exactly where this Lakers team is going. We also have no idea where the Chicago Bulls team is going, because it does seem like the Eastern Conference is more up for grabs now, considering how the Bucks aren't really in the contending conversation, and neither are the 76ers as of right now. So we'll see how it shapes up in the future, but by the time the Lakers are ready to make a deal, perhaps a batch of even more interesting players than the Bulls veterans are going to be up for grabs. And maybe it's obvious at this point that LA needs are going to be super, super great, that it feels compelled to empty the asset collection and do a sizable swap. The Lakers can't know that yet, however. So what they can already admit, and seemingly have in the past, is that Lavine and Vucevic are both capable of helping out their roster. And LA should know the ins and outs of their availability, the trade cost, potential impact, ease of transition, all of that. And there's a universe in which it makes sense for the Lakers to pursue one of these players this season, and maybe it's the one we're going to be living in. So we got to see exactly how this season plays out, because again, if they ultimately end up finding success, if they get through this slump that they're in, maybe they won't even consider trying to go for a trade. So again, this is more of a feel it out situation for the Lakers going forward. So we'll have to see exactly how well the Bulls continue to play, whether or not they're even going to trade Zach Lavine, because I feel like this talk has happened almost every single offseason for the last 3, maybe 4 years. Like, the Bulls were talking, the possibility of Zach Lavine getting traded, and then ultimately Zach Lavine does not end up getting traded. It's just a weird thing that they end up doing, and we have no idea if that's going to be the same situation now. But if there was any time that that they should trade Lavine, it should probably be around this season, because again, it looks like they're committing to a full rebuild. But again, we got to see how the rest of the season unfolds. So that's all that I have for this third segment. Now we're going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where we look at the top 10 players on the MVP ladder according to Kia, and the MVP ladder from Kia. It was just posted earlier today. So we're going to go ahead and look at that right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.